my cartoonist does cartoons for a lot of other people, but a guy named Tony Bronco, he's been doing cartoons for me for 7 to 10 years. And he did a series of cartoons on Tim Walz in Minnesota over the last couple of years. If you go to Comically Incorrect, which is Tony's website, you can see 6 cartoons. It gives a humorous but poignant look at some of the issues in Minnesota. When you look at Tim Walz, the most important thing to remember is he's the person Kamala chose because they got along the best. They were like mind. Tim Walz sat on the sidelines and let Minneapolis burn.
There you go.
He's the guy who then attacked the police and effectively destroyed the capacity of the police to get riots under control in Minnesota. He's the guy who put tampons in elementary school boy bathrooms. That's Tim Walz. He looks pretty benign. The stolen valor matters because the truth is one of the validators for him is his military service. But then we discover that his military service, at the very least, he blew what he did. And a lot of people are saying he left to avoid deployment. I know that a lot of people who worked with him said that. And we know he lied about being the head coach of a high school baseball team that won a state championship because he was actually coaching the 9th grade team and later got fired for getting caught drinking and driving. So we know he's not above telling tales about his own background to elevate himself. But most importantly, when we look at what he's done, what did he do as governor of Minnesota? What he did is he calls Ilhan Omar, one of his best friends in politics. Ilhan Omar. Why is that? Because in Ilhan Omar's district, ballots ride around in people's cars, live ballots ride around in people's cars. So they just fill them out and vote them. It's basically vote harvesting without any actual institutional control of how many ballots are put out. And he needed that in Minnesota to win. Quite honestly, it's why I think that Donald Trump should focus on other states, because there are so many votes in Minnesota that are cast that have nothing to do with actual people there. You can overcome it if you change the federal law, but you can't overcome it in the current situation. And she chose this guy over Josh Shapiro, who is the liberal from Pennsylvania and most likely would have delivered Pennsylvania for her. She picked him over Mark Kelly, who is a proven vote getter and in Arizona, has a great personal story. He has some problems. He did help develop satellites or balloon systems for China. Unknown whether the balloon that flew across the country and Joe Biden refused to shoot down until it was over the ocean was one he developed. As an astronaut with a lot of expertise, he made a lot of money from China, which is never really good if you're going to have a U.S. president who's dependent upon who's worked for the Communist Chinese Party. That's the problem. Chances are he would have delivered Arizona. She picked somebody in a state that really wasn't in play because he's the guy who's picked to carry on her legacy. It's a legacy that has nothing to do with the idea that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that we're individual, that they're individual rights. It has nothing to do with those concepts. It has everything to do with it's no longer a government at the consent of the governed. It's a government that tells you what you will accept. Because after all, if they actually believed in a government of consent of the governed, they couldn't with a straight face wipe the votes of 14.5 million people off the map and pretend they never occurred and say, oh yeah, we're providing you somebody as a nominee who nobody's voted for. They eliminate all claim to being saving democracy when they destroy the democratic presidential election process in so many states and say that doesn't matter. And the fact that Democrats, their voters, are willing to accept that tells you that they need to change the name of their party to the authority, because there's not a Democrat principle left within that structure.